Hello, everyone, and welcome to FECast episode 53, Empire of Glass Spoilers, Part 1. Before we get started, I just have a few quick plugs to make. First of all, huge thank you to all of our supporters on patreon.com. FECast would not be possible without the support of these fine folks. If you would like to be like them and help us make this podcast every week, you can go to patreon.com/Friends of Eternal in order to donate. So big thank you to Prewibin, Cotillion, Work Done Son, Chamomile, Chrissier, D-Dub, and Yeastout for their continued support of FECast. Also, if you're not already a part of the Friends of Eternal Discord, I strongly recommend it because it's the best place to talk to all the competitive players in the Eternal community. We have people who are multiple time Worlds competitors who chat regularly there, as well as people who are just starting out, and everyone's really friendly and happy to help each other out. Finally, another huge thank you to our editor, SRFS, who puts in a ridiculous amount of work every week in order to make sure you get FECast, that you can listen to it, and he edits it and sends it out to everyone. So thank you, SRFS. And one more thing, SRFS is actually TOing the Tuesday Night Eternal Tournament Series, which is awesome. All right, with all that out of the way, let's get started with episode 53 of FECast, Empire of Glass Spoilers, Part 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to FECast episode 53, Empire of Glass Spoilers, Part 1. I am one of your hosts, Sunyveil, and I am joined, as always, by Stormblessed, world's top 4 competitor.
Thank you, Sonny. I'm glad to be here, as always. And of course, today we have another exciting episode. This week, our topic is that, well, it's almost, new set time, and we're all excited. And there are currently, as of recording this cast, there are 99 cards that have been publicly spoiled. And we're going to go through a selection of them and tune in the future for a future FA cast where we discuss the rest of the set.
Yeah, holy cow, so much has happened since our last news update cast, right? We've gotten all the spoilers, a lot of information for Empire of Glass has come out. The set's coming out in just a few days on Monday next week, which is December 14th. And it looks super juiced. I mean, there's a lot of things to be excited about, both in power level and just unexplored design space. And they're doing a lot of tribal support, and I know a lot of people love that. So super excited for Empire of Glass, and yeah, we'll be taking our first look at it today. We've got a few other things going on in today's cast. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the short balance change article that they posted. There will be a few things that are modified before we head into the new set. And also, we'll be talking with Telemokos, the person behind Tuesday Night Eternal. Right now, Tuesday Night Eternal is having a winter season, if you will, of competitive Eternal, and it's really exciting. We're definitely really happy to see that competitive Eternal is still alive and well, and we'll be talking to the person behind it. So let's start off with our balance changes. Only a few things, and even fewer things that are really worthy of note. The first one is the Ice Elemental nerf, which is the card that comes off of the Primal Emblem.
The emblem of Lin-Ra, yes. It's been a very long time in the past. I believe Sunny was more keen on the fact that they were extremely overpowered. And it turned out that, we saw Emblem of Shoff get nerfed. I believe it started out as a 3-3 and now it is a 3-2.
Yep.
And now we are seeing Emblem of Lin-Ra, which was once a 3-1, is now becoming a 2-1. Those cards were hallmarks of aggro decks and have been very good. And it probably will still be a very good card, but it does make the deck, a lot weaker in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing a deck that wants to play Emblem of Lin-Ra, you're still going to play it, right? Like a 2-1 Aegis, being able to transform one of your powers late in the game to a 2-1 Aegis is still good. Yeah, so I like this change. Ice Elemental was just an absolute nightmare for decks that couldn't block very easily, and Aegis continues to be just a very powerful keyword. Another big change, and this was put under changes to the draft format. We have Mask Maker to 3 cost. Mask Maker, of course, is the 3/3 that when you play it, you get to choose a unit type out of the units that you have in play, and it gives all of your units +1/+1. It was previously 4 cost, and now it's 3. And while I'm pretty skeptical of this making its way into Constructed. It's definitely something to take note, because no matter what type of tribal synergies you're working with, this can give a buff to all of your other units.
Yeah, I like this change a lot. Just as just from like a fun perspective, like Massmaker has always been just too expensive, and everyone loves building janky tribe decks, and those are fun to play and those are fun to build. But Massmaker just was too expensive and just was not good enough, because having 3 health for 4 cost while not doing enough just felt awful. Just never felt like it was good enough. Where now it costs 3, you can play as on curve better. It has good stats for its cost. The most obvious place for it in a competitive constructed deck is obviously Yetis. Like you look at the Yeti lists at Worlds, right? Like you look at like Gage's list, for example, and it's playing like 4 Crunch, right? Like in that instance, Massmaker is going to just be better than Crunch in that deck. Going 12 Lord Yeti could be the way to go. Although I know that some people have their doubts on even pushing that many 3-drops in a deck. But obviously, if there's a place for Massmaker currently, it's going to be in Yetis.
Yeah, I'm not so optimistic about its place in Yetis. I think that the lords that you have are much better, and I think Crunch has its place in Yetis. Although I'm more about the Yeti Cookmasters in that deck. Anyway, that's beside the point. The last change is that the Inner Fire cycle, which is Inner Fire, was a 5-cost spell that created an Infernus, and also has, for each of your Grandin, you may pay 2 and exhaust it to play another Infernus. These all got errata to become Amplify spells, and a few of them had their Amplify cost reduced. So Inner Fire now only costs 1 additional power for each additional Infernus you want to make. Curfew Enforcement costs 1 and amplifies for 1.
Just for the record, just for those of you who don't know what Curfew Enforcement does, because I wouldn't necessarily expect you to, because it's an old card that never saw any play ever. It was a 2 cost. Now it is a 1 in a Justice for a slow spell. Enemy units get -1 strength. Amplify 1. Exhaust a Valkyrie to give enemy units an additional -1 strength. So if you have 3 Valkyrie, you can pay 3. You pay 4, exhaust all 3 Valkyrie, and then all of your enemy units get -4. So it's kind of like the old Helot effect. You get the old Helot effect for much cheaper cost, right? But it's basically half the cost on both ends, right? So instead of paying 4 to give enemy units -2, now it's pay 4 to give enemies -4, which is a lot more efficient.
Yeah, well, I still think it's probably really bad on its own. And the last one is the Deadly Competition, the Unseen Kill spell. Now it has Amplify 1. I still think that these cards are pretty bad, with the exception of Stirring Sand, and that's not because of the Amplify effect. That card was actually pretty much untouched. But those are changes to be aware of, and we are getting some Amplify support, so, it's not completely out of the question that one of these cards will surface. All right, let's talk about, well, what we're here to talk about today, and that is all the new cards, as many of them as we can fit into one episode, that we'll be seeing in Empire of Glass. So let's start with the new cycle of powers. Now, these are paintings. They exist in the factions that have vows, right? The factions that don't have silexes. I'll give the example for Praxis Painting. These are uncommons, by the way. Praxis Painting is the fire time power. It says gain fire time and 1 health. It's depleted while you already have 2 or more maximum power. So if it's the first or second power you play, it's great. Get the power undepleted and you gain health. After that, it will be depleted. So my opinion of these is that these will be good for high influence strategies in the decks that don't have silexes, that only have vows. But aside from that, I'm not too hot about them. I mean, it's got a pretty big drawback in coming into play depleted after you have 2 power. What do you think, Stormblessed?
I actually like them a fair bit. Well, an Expedition for sure, because
Oh yeah.
An Expedition they're just going to be great. I guess the real question is, we don't know exactly what the power in Expedition is going to look like yet. We don't know if we're going to get seats or if we're going to get banners or whatever. So it could be that like we get banners in 5 factions, and like if it's paintings and vows versus like silexes and banners, then I'll still go with silexes and banners over paintings and vows. But I don't know. I think gaining 1 health is interesting because we do have Life Force, which was a thing back in the day. Gaining life is never irrelevant, and it does come into play undepleted a lot of times when you need it to, in a sense, right? Because the early turns matter more than later turns. Yes, it's sad that it's going to be depleted later in the game. I actually don't think they're that bad. I think like Huru painting is going to be a big deal for Huru Kira, because that just wants more influence and really wanted to have more of it. There are some factions where it's less useful than others, like Praxis Painting seems less useful than Combre Painting or Haru Painting or Felon Painting even. But overall I think they're okay.
So I actually disagree with them showing up in a deck like Kira, because when you're playing Kira, what is the most important undepleted power that you have? It's like powers 3 and 4, right?
That's
You
true.
play
That's
Kira
true.
and you have backup for it. And I feel like that's true of like control decks that want to play Hailstorm, or something that wants to play like Rollant on curve also. So like that makes me really nervous about these paintings. They're going to be great when you can play them in on turns 1 and 2, or but if you have to play them later than that, I think they might have a real drawback. I mean, obviously if you have these in your hand, you're going to play them, but like depleted power, like when you need undepleted power, is always risky. All right, let's go on. We can agree that they will see play.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how good they are. All right, Deheen Blitz, 5-cost legendary Valkyrie with triple fire influence requirements. It's a 5/3 flying charge, ultimate pay 3 to draw a fire weapon from your market. Holy cow, I love Deheen. This is
Yeah.
I don't think it's as good as Soulfire Drake. That's the one that gave your deck either flying or charge, right? I don't think it's
Hmm.
quite as good as that card was before it got nerfed, but I'm not sure. This might not be as good as Eclipse Dragon, but it's definitely really exciting. And if you've ever watched me play Eternal, you know that I love my charge fire units, right?
I think this card is overall better than Eclipse Dragon. The ultimate, I think, is pretty relevant, right? The key here, and this is an effect we've never actually seen before. This is not pay 3 to go to the market. This is pay 3 to just straight up draw a card from the market. But yes, it's specifically a fire weapon. But before, we always had to swap a card. This, you don't have to lose a card from your hand. You just pay 3 and you just get the card, which is just, absurd, right?
Oh yeah.
Like it just adds so much value to an already, well statted aggressive card.
Yeah, and I mean, when you can play it on 8 and hit them for 5 and draw the weapon without having to have Deheen survive, that's also a huge deal. I mean, you could make the argument that that ability might not be great because, a late game weapon is not necessarily that good. If you have a 5/3 flyer, you're already winning, like you're hitting your opponent for 10 and you're playing a very heavy fire deck. But I think this guy is going to kill a lot of people, and I am going to be on the not receiving side of it. What would you say that side is? The sending side of it, I guess.
The not the side that's not doing math.
I do plenty of math, thank you. All right.
Math is for blockers, though. If you're attacking, these are not a blocker.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna go on. So our next card is another one that's going to kill a lot of people. This is Passionate Stonehammer. It's a 2-cost single fire Valkyrie. It's a 2/1 flying berserk reckless, and it has plunder. I think this card's pretty insane, just without the plunder, and the fact that it has plunder, well, just makes it that much better. I think this is going to kill a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of situations where you play this on 2, you attack for 2, and then if they don't deal with it, you slap a Caleb's Persuader on it and attack them for 14 while drawing 2 cards.
Or you just play Master's Blade and attack them for 10, on turn 3.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about Master's Blade. I was trying to think about what weapons go really well on this on turn 3. I guess Master's Blade does the trick. You also get to invoke if you do that, right?
Yeah, you also get to invoke, so you get the card back immediately. I like this card as well. I mean, Plunder is great, as we've seen on, everything. And this card's really cool. You can't misplay with it. It has Reckless, so it forces you to play correctly.
Well, I mean, you can definitely make a mistake on what turn you choose to berserk, but yeah, it's the damage output is so ridiculous for such a small cost. I actually would expect this to be nerfed at some point. Like, it's possible that the format can
Ooh.
just deal with it, but boy, like I would expect that plunder to come off the card. It just makes it too good in too many different situations.
Yeah. I mean, the card seems like just a great 2-drop. Some people have been complaining about the lack of good aggressive 2-drops in the past, and this clearly shows that Darylf has not given up on aggro's archetype. Okay, so the next card is, you might sense a theme here of unique card designs, because that's what Daryl seems to be doing with Empire of Glass is, cards like Kindling Carver, right? Cards that are really powerful, but also are exploring new directions and make new decks, trying to sidestep power creep in that sense. This card is called Fair Exchange. It's 3 and a time for a fast spell. Put one of your units into your market, then play another unit from your market with the same cost or less.
All right, how are we breaking this? So the first thing that came to my mind is somehow playing either Pyro Elemental. It's the 6 cost that gets its cost reduced if you've played a spell that turn, but I guess that's actually not good because it would be reduced to 3 cost. So I guess you got to do a Northwind Herald, which is the set 1 card. It's a 6 cost, 3/2 flying, but it's free if you've played 2 spells. So you play 2 spells, you play the Northwind Herald. I guess on turn 2 you do that. Turn 3 you fair exchange it for... What are we exchanging it for?
Well, so I mean, whenever you look at cost effects like this, there's 2 cards always come to mind. The first is the dragon, the 9-cost dragon that reduces cost by the number of damage the opponent's taken this turn.
Oh, yeah. It's like Sindrock or something.
Yes. Oh, it's Sindok.
Sindok.
Yeah. So there's 2 effects always come to mind. Sindok is the first card that I'm always like, okay, if something involves cost reduction, how would it play with Sindok? Because Sindok's never going to be good, by the way. But you can sort of use Sindok as a benchmark for the most busted thing you can do in a sense. One key thing with Fair Exchange is that because it's a fast spell, you can use it on the opponent's turn, right? So you can play your card for its cheap cost, and then immediately on the opponent's turn, get it for, whatever busted thing you're trying to do, right? You don't have to wait the full turn cycle like with Reweave. If you tried to Reweave Northwind Herald or Unstable Form Northwind Herald, you have to wait a whole turn cycle to do it, right? Which gives the opponent a chance to kill it. This can also be used in response to a removal spell as well to change your unit up. To me, the thing I'm thinking of is the best case for it is to go to the cheap cards in the market. Like you can turn a 3-drop into like Blurred Stigmalock to upgrade it to make it a 7/6 Overwhelm. Another cute thing you can do with it is turn any 3-drop into Jack in, not in fire, right? You can play this in a mono time deck and turn a 3-drop into Jack and be like, surprise, instant speed, 4 damage to 2 things.
The Jack thing, that's pretty good because like Jack, the influence cost for it is what is prohibitive for a lot of decks, right? And this works well with summon effects, right? Yeah, that's a pretty good idea. I think that if you're playing this card, you have to be doing something pretty busted, though. It's called Fair Exchange, but you cannot play it fairly and expect it to be good. I think you have to be doing something that is pretty broken for it to really be good. And just, putting in a Jack in a deck that can't otherwise play it, especially if you've got like, a mono time deck that has difficulty removing stuff. That seems like a way that might work out pretty well. This looks like fun. This one looks like fun.
It seems very complicated. We'll take a lot of work to find out the best uses for it because it's not a simple card, and we'll definitely need actual testing to find out where it falls into place.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next card is called Controlled Demolition. It's 5 and a Justice for a fast spell. Give one of your units double damage and regen, but it only costs 2 if you play it on a Sentinel. So obviously you're not playing it on a non-Sentinel, except maybe in draft, but on Sentinels, it's a 2 cost, give one of your units double damage and regen. So it saves them from combat. It's permanent double damage as well, so you can keep pushing damage in. It's not necessarily the best card ever and might not even be worth talking about. But I only wanted to bring it up because it's another card that if you're a long-time listener to the cast, you will know that I love the card called Volatility. And this is a card you can get off Volatility. And that's all I wanted to say about it.
Oh, God. I was wondering why you put that card on the episode sheet. Yeah, okay.
We can move on from this.
Yes, please. All right, next one is Jade Lodestone. This is a 1-cost relic in Justice. Stun each enemy unit with 1 attack or less. Pay 1, exhaust a Sentinel, and sacrifice Jade Lodestone to play a Justice Sigil from your deck depleted. So this one's pretty interesting. I mean, 1-cost relics are not all that common, and anytime that they have an effect that's interesting, you really gotta pay attention to them because there are a lot of relic synergies. What were you thinking with this one, Stormblessed?
This card seems powerful, because it has relic synergies, it ramps you, it has ramp synergies, and it can maybe stall some aggression, although if it was stun each enemy unit with like cost 1 or less, that would be obviously it'd be a lot better.
Yeah.
But this card was interesting in a lot of ways because it was one of the first cards spoiled, and it kind of signaled, what Sentinels would be doing in the set, right? So it's kind of like, with a card like this, you expect some sort of cheaper Sentinels, right? Because it's not good if you only have expensive Sentinels. You want critical massive Sentinels because that's how the card becomes good. And 1-cost Sentinels and 2-cost Sentinels are where you want to be. And it's just such an interesting design. Again, what I'm saying, like, these are just unique designs. It's hard to really analyze where it's going to be good.
Yeah. You mentioned cheap Sentinels. That's always been something that's been difficult for Sentinels and something that you've wanted. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if they just have like an Eternal Bible that says that we're never going to print a Sentinel that costs less than 3, right? Or something like that.
Well, in this set, we already have like 7 that cost 2 or less.
Oh, really? Oh, I must not have been paying attention to the unit types.
We have a bunch, and there's also a bunch of, random spoilers that have been spoiled during this recording that also are cheap Sentinels as well. But we'll if we've got time, we'll get into those later. But anyways, so our next card is also a Sentinel synergy card. It's Laser Blast. It's 3 and a fire for a spell, not a fast spell. One of your units deals its current health in damage to enemy unit. Laser Blast costs 2 less if your unit is a Sentinel. So again, presumably, just like Controlled Demolition, you're really only going to be playing this if you're playing a Sentinel deck. And in that case, it's a 1-cost Dragon Breath, but for toughness.
Yeah, this one looks kind of interesting. If there is a dedicated like Praxis Sentinels deck, this seems like a good way of using those for removal without having to exhaust like you would with a killer spell.
Yeah.
It's powerful, but it's also like, it's got its limitations. It only works if you've got a ton of Sentinels. Basically, all of your units have to be Sentinels, or at least all of your units that attack and block reasonably well. If the Sentinel deck is good, I think that this is going to be a big part of it.
And here you go. Here's just speaking of cheap Sentinels. This card was just secretly spoiled because of the event that's coming out tomorrow, the preview event. They put in some of the preview cards, and so this is a new Sentinel that costs 1. It's called Auto Tread. It's a 1 and a fire for a 1/1. Enemies lose their regen and can't regenerate. Pay 1 and discard a card to deal 1 damage. Auto Tread gets +1/+1.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, not only is it 1-cost Sentinel for, Sentinel synergy stuff and having critical mass cheap Sentinels, it has hate tech, so they can't regen. It can deal 1 damage, which is, not irrelevant, obviously. As you've seen, Snowball has always been a great card. And it also has discard synergy effects, if that matters, right? If you want to stick things in the void, it can be, a 2-cost 2/2, deal 1 damage and discard a card, which isn't always downside either. So it's a very interesting card.
Yeah, Sentinel Reanimator, right? This probably actually isn't like the exact card you'd want, but I mean, discard outlets when a format is powerful enough, and I would say Throne is definitely there. That's generally an upside. Ways of putting cards in the void. Also, sacrifice outlets. Not that this card is a sacrifice outlet. Those are things that are often positives. Yeah, that's pretty cool. We'll see when we have the full set what a Sentinel deck looks like, or what a deck that is trying to reanimate looks like.
Our next card is a fun thing Darylf has done in this set is we don't have just Grenadin anymore. Now we have Grenadin animals. So it seems most of the Grenadin in this set are also mechanical animals, I guess. And this is a Grenadin pig, which is a fun creature type to say. Just say it to yourself, people. It's Grenadin pig. It doesn't just fill you with joy to say Grenadin pig. Anyways, this is Grubbot. It's 3 fire primal for a 2/2. When a Grenadin hits the enemy player, create and draw a treasure trove. When Grubbot itself hits the enemy player, reduce the cost of each treasure trove in your hand by 1 this turn. So this can get out of hand pretty quickly. It's a weird card because there's a lot of tension in it. It's still just a 2/2 for 3, but it also is potentially really powerful because it could potentially, draw you 4 cards for 4 cost. So I don't really know how to feel about this card. I'm not as high on it as some people are, but it's just a weird card to me.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I think I'm pretty low on it. Like, if you're playing a Grenadin deck, you're going to be clunky, and just having a bunch of excess treasure troves isn't actually like something that you really need. The fact that it doesn't attack or block well on its own is obviously a downside, but definitely can get out of hand.
Remember, Grenadins used to be the grindy deck, right? Like remember Grenadin Hour or whatever?
Oh yeah,
that was an old grindy deck, right? So this could be a new form of the old grindy deck.
Well, I mean, I just think that like it's kind of at odds with itself. When you're like trying to be aggressive, a lot of the times drawing cards is a trap. Like, it's better to just be more aggressive than spending cards to draw cards. So that's why I think this card is not actually that great. And if you're playing, already grinding Grenadin deck, I don't think I love having more treasure troves in it, because you have ways of just drawing cards like the Strange Burglar, and the Scrounger. Scrapper. Yeah, jeez.
Scrounger is the magic card, if I recall correctly.
I've forgotten a lot of the names, apparently, a lot of the specific names, but the 4/6 that draws 2 cards when you sacrifice a unit. So I'm pretty low on this one. It's part of an uncommon cycle of multi-faction cards that are all pretty interesting. And the next one we have here is Stormhalt Battalion. It's a 3-cost Huru card, costs Justice and Primal. It's a 2/2 soldier. It has Aegis and summon kill a stunned enemy unit.
So my thinking with this card is that on the face of it, it looks not that great, right? Stunned has been like a theme that sort of has come up, but like hasn't really ever shown up in Constructed. But it's possible this set gives us enough critical mass. Plus, there are other cards in the set that, kill stunned units. So like having critical mass of the effect kill a stunned enemy unit is what you need to make the deck good, right? You don't want one card with that effect to make the deck good. As well as the fact that its relevant type soldier has synergy with another future card, tactical superiority, which is, the obvious reason that I thought this card had some merit to be included here. But on the face of it, doesn't look that great, but it might have critical mass for synergy purposes.
Yeah, also, like, if I don't think that I haven't seen any imbue cards in this set, but, like, imbue cards have been pretty popular with Maveloft Huntress. It's not unreasonable to just kill whatever they've stunned with Maveloft Huntress. So you can just randomly get them. This card, like the previous one, is more interesting than good, but definitely, like, the potential is there. All right, the next card is Relay Point. I like this one. It's a 2-cost relic for Justice and Time. Summon, play a 2/1 soldier, exhaust 4 of your units, and sacrifice Relay Point to play a 5/5 Sentinel. So it is a relic unit, basically. Not unlike the Lethrai one. What am I thinking
Left Right
of?
Hideaway.
Yeah, Lethrai Hideaway. And that card, I mean, it's done some interesting things. I don't know if that's ever been tier 1 at any point, but when you have relics that can double as units, that's powerful. I mean, it's no rat cage, but the Hideaway, Phoenix Stone, these cards tend to warrant further consideration.
Yeah, I like this card a lot. I think this card is great because it's a relic, but it also has synergy with all of these, losing relics, putting relics in your void, and then picking them back up or whatever. There seems to be a lot of this theme in this set is like, sacrificing your own relics. And this, puts a relic in the void, which could be really relevant. I think it's overall can be better than Left Right Hideaway because its effect is just a little bit better. Sonya mentioned Rat Cage. This plays with Rat Cage, right? Like Rat Cage is all about creating, lots of board. This allows you to use lots of board effectively to make a bigger board. So Rat Cage has never gone into Justice previously, but maybe it will with cards like this.
I mean, if you have rats, then you can get up to 4 units that you need to like throw an emergency block or something, right? I do think that like exhausting four units, that's so many to exhaust. So the second half of the ability is not something I'm super excited about, but the fact that it is a relic that creates a unit is something that I am excited about, especially in these factions, which tend to have more play with relics than like Feln, for example.
Yeah. Okay, so the next card is another interesting card. Just looks very solid to me. It's Vicious Overgrowth, 2 and a primal for a spell, not a fast spell. Overwhelm, deal 3 damage, but it has Amplify 2. Add a random primal card to your market. Now, that second part, not really going to come up too much in Constructed, although, it will obviously come up there every now and again, especially depending on if we get enough cards that, I don't know, maybe interact with the market somehow. But overall, even just as a 2-cost spell, Overwhelm, deal 3 damage seems very solid to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. For decks that don't want to play fire, like I think Seer is generally significantly better than this. But if you're playing like an Elysian deck, you can't play Seer. And this is an effect in Primal that, does a good job of taking out a unit. It can also have situations where it does 1 to a unit, like a Trailmaker, and then 2 to the opposing player, and that's pretty cool. But just having a deal 3 in Primal, I think is definitely worth taking note. I think this is going to see a significant amount of play.
In Spellcrack, do you think this is better or Seer? Is the Fast better or is the Overwhelm better? Because the Overwhelm allows you to deal extra bonus damage to the face.
Oh, I think Seer is way, way better because, like, a lot of the times in that deck, it's all about protecting the Garden of Omens.
Let's say Skycrag aggro.
So I think Seer is almost always better. Like, the ability to have a fast spell, like, think of a situation where you're missing curve or whatever and you have 2 leftover power, but you have a seer. Being able to seer at the end of your opponent's turn after they play something and catch back up in situations like that is such a huge deal. So I think that seer is significantly better than this in like almost every circumstance. But this is a card that's going to see a lot of play because it doesn't require playing fire. It's also really good with like prodigious sorcery. Like you don't have to play static bolt anymore. Like, static bolt is just so bad. All right, let's go on to the next one. This one's really exciting. This is Cassandrith's Invitational card, a community created card. That's what I'm looking for. So this is Moldermuck, a 3-cost double shadow ooze. It's a 4/4 with decay. When it attacks or blocks, it deals 1 damage to itself, then play an exact copy of it. So I think what's going to happen a lot of the time is you play it as a 4/4, you attack, it shrinks to a 3/3, but it comes with another 3/3 that can make even more copies of itself. Obviously, you want to try to make it bigger, I guess, like make it permanently bigger so that the copies are bigger and that it doesn't eat itself too quickly. But this is a really cool design. I don't actually know what Cassandra submitted, but this is super cool.
Yeah, this card is great. Just keynote to audience: do not give this deadly because otherwise it will kill itself. But if you can pull off giving it killer and regen, which I actually believe there is a card now that does give something killer and regen, then it doesn't lose the 4/4. Although no, killer no matter what doesn't work as well as you think it does, because the killer goes away, and then your copy doesn't get another killer attack on it, which is probably intentional. But if you give this regen, you can prevent the damage to it. If you give it killer, you can immediately get the attack off.
No, I think killer works the way that you want to. I think if you make a copy of it, it'll refresh the killer, because that's how
it says make an exact copy, not a copy, Sonny, an exact copy.
Do you think that's different than mirror image?
I think so.
Huh. Interesting.
I think it's also intentional. I think Cass was talking about how it's not supposed to give killer, but I'm not positive.
Okay.
Hello everyone, this is your editor. In Cassandra's post, they noted directly from Direwolf on the ruling. They said, "We send this with compliments, and the additional clarification that an exact copy in this case means a copy with the same state on its consumable skills, like killer and regen. So any already used abilities such as Aegis or regen will also no longer be active on those exact copies." And now back to the cast.
Next card is a card that a lot of people are saying is overpowered and busted. It's Invasive Species. It's a 1 and a primal for a 2/1 Mandrake with Reckless, and it has Entomb. Add a copy of Invasive Mandrake to your market. Bargain. The enemy player takes damage while you have no cards in hand. So if your hand is empty and the enemy player takes damage, you can play Invasive Species out of your market. How do you feel about Invasive Species, Sonny?
I don't think it's very good. I mean, having played a lot of aggressive decks, it's like once you're out of cards in hand, you're probably dead. And a 2/1 or a couple 2/1s isn't going to help that. So what I see basically is just a 2/1 Reckless that kind of regrows in your market, but having a game plan that involves going empty-handed is just so incredibly risky unless you have something that lets you draw additional cards every turn, which this definitely doesn't do. And like once you get to this point where you can play this from the market because you've emptied your hand, like a 2/1 isn't going to be that devastating for the most part. So I think this is pretty bad. It's even got Reckless tacked onto it. It seems significantly worse than like Snowcrust Yeti, or like even Oni Ronin or something like that.
Yeah, I'll be honest on this cast. I haven't been honest to Batteries. I'm sorry, Batteries, but I'm not the biggest fan of Invasive Species either. I think the card is just very awkward, as Sonny says, like, especially in Eternal, more so than even like Magic, where, holding cards in hand, like if you don't just hold like extra lands in Magic, whatever, but like in Eternal, you hold extra power in hand because you have merchants and you have Jack. So like, going empty-handed is a punishment, right? If you go empty-handed, you play Invasive Species, and next turn you draw your Smuggler, you're going to be really sad that you played Invasive Species. That being said, there are a couple of interesting synergies with the rest of the set. We have another card called Gloves of the Pyromancer, which we'll talk about later, which turns into Prax Outlaw when we get to it. And then we also have a card called Unexpected Arrival, which also has cute synergy with this card. Just fun little note in case you weren't aware. They changed how the market works, so you can't 3+1 anything, but cards with Bargain can be 3+1, so you can play 3 Invasive Species main deck and 1 in the market if you really want to.
Yeah, but like you just want them in your deck because they're good on turn 1, and like if it's in your market, like it's just going to end up in your market either way. One other thing I should mention: you mentioned Magic. There have been plenty of cards in Magic that have the effect of if you have no cards in your hand, this gets an additional effect. It's called Hellbent. It was a keyword. The only card that I can think of that has Hellbent that does anything is the one that lets you look through your deck for any one card and put into your hand. And that one is easily broken. So like anything that is just trying to be aggressive or something and try to get down to 0 cards in hand has not really shown itself to be very powerful in other card games.
And part of that for Magic is that the cards weren't powerful themselves because the designers realized that people don't like being empty-handed, so they made the cards that allowed them to be empty-handed not very good. For people that aren't aware of Magic history, what Magic ended up doing is they brought the mechanic back, kind of, but they changed it so and people referred to it colloquially as heck bent, which was if you had 1 or 0 cards in hand, so that way you weren't feeling so obligated to go completely empty-handed all the time. But anyways, tangent aside, yeah, I think I like if the card's good because it's a cool card, but I'm just not feeling it. And, however, I think there is an interesting combo potential with it. If you give it 0 health and you have that Yeti, the 3/1 Yeti, that when you play a unit, you get to deal 1 damage, you can just keep playing it from the market. If you give it 0 cost and 0 health, you can play from the market endlessly and kill the opponent that way. Sunny's that sort of derision sounds like Sunny is not believing in that combo in the slightest. So we'll move on. So Cyberhound is 3 primal for a 3/3. Whenever one of your other units dies, it gets Berserk. And Fate, draw a card if you have a Grenadin. And this is a Grenadin dog.
Yeah, so this is one of many Fate cards in the set. Looks like Fate is making a return. And if you didn't play during the Zhou Jotun Hurler days, Fate is an incredibly powerful mechanic, especially when you get to just draw a card for free. Holy cow. So that part of the card is really interesting. The fact that it's a 3/3, it's basically just a 3/3 that you get for free. Hopefully you have a Grenadin in play at all times if you're playing a Grenadin deck. But just, I mean, Fate draw card is so incredibly powerful. I can't understate that, and that alone makes this card very interesting.
Yeah, the worst part about Cyberhound compared to Zoe in its Fate sense is that if it's in your opening hand, it won't draw you a card where Zoe will, and then choose a 3/3 Grenadin. In that sense, this card could maybe just be a market card, right? If you just want to, get an extra body and an extra card in hand, don't underestimate the power of just putting in the market and then being able to just pull out of the market someday and drawing an extra card, right? Having a 3/3 and an extra random card from the deck might just be a good market swap.
Yeah,
Who knows?
it's not crazy to think of. Your primal etchings can be like kind of a weird wisdom of the elders where one of the cards you're drawing is a 3/3. I don't know. Just being a 3/3, like the ability it's not super powerful for constructed, but we've seen with cards like Zhou and Jotun Hurler that you don't necessarily need great cards if you just have a ridiculous amount of card advantage. That doesn't cost any power.
If this was a 2/2, I don't think I'd be interested in it. But being a 3/3, that pretty it's a Grenadin deck, right? Grenadin are probably going to be sacrificing themselves, right? So pretty reliably, it's going to be a 3/3 Berserk for 3. So while that's not the best card in the world, a 3/3 Berserk for 3 that also draws you a card is a very good card. Yeah, I like the card a lot.
All right, the next card, Onoris Roa. It's a 5 cost, 5/5 in double time. Has Overwhelm and says you and your other units are invulnerable to spell damage, amplify 2, gain 5 health. So good against the decks that rely heavily on spell damage in order to kill things. So something like Spellcrag might really suffer against this card, although I would argue that Spellcrag was suffering from a lot of things right now. I don't think this card's that insane. Like maybe a good market card, but I think that most decks don't rely heavily enough on spell damage that this card is going to be that good, especially since it costs 5.
I kind of wish it had endurance rather than overwhelm, because I feel like endurance would fit the theme of the card better. Because the card's I want to protect you, right? That's what the card's saying. It's protecting you, it's gaining you life, it's protecting you, and then suddenly it's just overwhelming the across things. I feel like endurance is the I'm gonna protect you mechanic, right? You attacks and blocks. I think the card's actually fairly interesting. Just being able to just gain 10 is not irrelevant versus an aggro deck, right? Yes, it costs 9, but this does happen where the aggro deck puts you down to 2, and you're sitting there for a number of turns. They're just trying to wait to draw a seer. And you're I don't have any life gain. I don't know how I'm going to come back from this. You can play this as both a card that can stop aggro from having, because aggro, most of its damage, most of its removal is spell damage based, right? So but somebody said market card for sure, but I mean Expedition possibly even main deck, but I'm not sure about Throne.
Well, I mean, I'm just struggling to think of situations where it's that much better than Sandstorm Titan, aside from super late in the game. Sandstorm Titan might as well be invulnerable from damage against a lot of decks, and it's bigger, it costs 1 less, it has endurance, which you want so much.
yeah, it's probably not. I want it to be good enough because it's a cool card, but yeah, you're probably right.
All right, the next card has me so excited. It is a legendary power, Cast Iron Furnace. Deal 1 damage to the enemy player. Oh, it's factionless, I should mention. Deal 1 damage to the enemy player. Then, if you have 5 or more factionless cards in your void, play a 5/5 Dragon Simulacre with flying. And if you're wondering how you can get 5 or more factionless cards in your void, how about Petition, Treasure Trove, Seek Power from when you got hit by Royal Decree. And then you get a free 5/5 flying. It's incredible. I think this card is insane. I can't wait to play with it.
Yeah, this card seems very fun. I'm not sure how common it'll be to get the dragon. Obviously, everyone's like, let's build a factionless deck now because we have Prism Golem, we have this, we have the new site. That maybe if we've got time, we'll talk about later. But like, there's a lot to do. I'm not sure how reliable dragon will be. Even like TJS, right? Play this as a one of in TJS. You can tutor it off of, Display of Vision late game to get a 5/5 dragon at instant speed. That seems really cool. As well as the fact that this card is also just doing a lot in general. Like, I think you play this card in Mono Fire, for instance. Not only is it potentially, just extra reach, like, just doing one damage to enemy player is good when it costs literally nothing. But it also breaks face ages if need to, right? Like, you might not realize this, but part of the effect of this card is breaking face ages. Like, in Time Just a Shadow, right? You can get this card if you need to, break face ages to then be able to kill Sling. You can then break face ages in a better way than having to target the opponent with your Display of Vision, for instance. So I think this card's doing a lot and will do a lot in a variety of different decks too, from aggro decks to control decks.
Yeah, and also Jack creates treasure troves. We're going to change things up now. We are joined by the person behind Tuesday Night Eternal, which is a tournament series that is free to enter that will be running throughout this winter season, and it looks super cool. You can check them out in the link that we post in the description. And yeah, this is the creator of that series. So welcome to the cast, Telemokos.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you could join us, Telemokos. So before we begin discussing how awesome Tuesday Night Eternal has been, I would like to ask you a quick question. In Empire of Glass, out of the cards you have seen, what spoiler excites you the most? What one card would you like to talk about right here while you have the spotlight?
Oh, that is a really good question. Let me pull up the spoiler here. I would say that I am most excited. Probably not the best card that we've seen, but because it was essentially my my first and only preview card given from Direwolf, and it's got some cool deck building creativity. The Djang-li, the Misfit. I don't think it's going to be the best card ever, but this is the 3/4 for 4 with Overwhelm, and summon each unit in your deck with a unique game gets +3. I think that's really interesting. It's a really unique effect on a body, really challenges your deck building skills, and could be a really fun card to build around.
Yeah, so currently we have, what is it called? Portal?
Archmagister's Portal, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can play 4 Portal and 4 Djang-li. And, normally Portal has been in TJS or Combray decks, and now maybe it'll move into Fire. It seems like a fun effect, right? It seems sort of maybe underwhelming, but don't underestimate the power of +3 attack, because that'll add up very quickly over time.
Yeah, +3 attack's big. So
yeah, and it might be difficult to choose only one card because, holy cow, they are exploring so much unexplored design space with this set, and so many of the cards are so exciting. And I also agree with Stormblessed that that buff is that could be very real. I mean, +2/+2 is probably better than +3 attack, but like, having a unit to play instead of just a relic that doesn't affect the board and attack or block, that means a lot.
Especially because as I always like to say on this cast, as far as when you're building a deck with synergy and you want to build a deck to do something, you got to have critical mass, and having 4 copies of an effect is just not enough a lot of the time, right? But now we have 8 copies of the effect benefiting for Highlander, which it makes it suddenly a lot more interesting.
Yeah. All right. So we are a week into Tuesday Night Eternal, right? We've had 2 tournaments. The first one was won by friend of the Discord, Stormguard, with their trusty Stonescar deck. And the other one was won by also friend of the Discord, the Boxer, with a Feln deck that used At Any Cost and Felrock the Outcast.
Top 8 Worlds competitor, the Boxer.
Yes. How have the tournaments gone? How have the games been? I've heard some really good things about the games, but I haven't had a chance to check them out myself.
Yeah, I'm very happy to say that the tournaments, both of the first 2, have been incredible. I couldn't really have asked for anything more. The community support's been amazing. The games have been amazing. The VODs are on YouTube. I would definitely check them out. We can talk about some of those games in a minute, but the tournaments have both gone very smoothly. We've gotten some really great playoffs, some great finals. The finals of Doc 28 versus the Boxer on Tuesday night was I mean, I don't know how you can ask for anything better than 2 top Worlds competitors going at it with these solid decks, going to the third game to win it all. Was pretty epic to see. So it's been great. Great turnout so far. Great support from the community, both from participants as well as engaging in the streams. And I can't say anything about thankful to the community for how well it's gone.
Yeah, we'll definitely link to the VODs in the description.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're doing this. Obviously it sounds like you're having a good time hosting these tournaments, but it's nice that there's some sort of, event action happening in this lull between Direwolf's own organized play, right? We just had Worlds, we don't know when the announcement for season 3 is coming, so it's really great of you to step up and host these tournaments.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And that's actually the reason that I started them to begin with. Was I kind of joined the game right in the middle of one of these lulls, a year or two ago, where it was sort of after the ETS and some of the competitive tournaments had sort of started to die down a little bit, but then before some of the more competitive official play had started. And I was kind of looking around saying there's got to be something more. There's got to be some sort of community tournaments that is a step down from Worlds or, the ECQs, but that people can play in on a regular basis. And I think I caught at a moment where there wasn't really anything like that, and I just got encouraged and said, okay, well, if that's not there, then it's time to make that. And so we had our sort of initial inaugural season last year, which I wouldn't even call really a season. It was just sort of experimenting, doing some events, getting some feedback, and then after taking sort of 6 months off, it was okay, how do we make this a real season, make it more official? We took a ton of great feedback from the community on what they wanted to see and set up this structure of this season, which you had mentioned, Sunny, about essentially it's a season from now until the end of February. I'm calling it the winter season. It's about 12 weeks. So every week there's a tournament, either Throne, Expedition, and then it alternates Tuesday and Friday. So it's 12 weeks. And then we're going to have the top 16 invitational the first weekend in March, which will be basically the winners of the 12 events, plus the highest rated finishers on the leaderboard.
We've long questioned, the idea of, rewarding consistency at, tournaments. And this is a way to reward consistency, right? So the 4 players that have done the best without winning get to also ascend to the invitational.
Exactly. So you can spike one event or you can just participate all season long, and it kind of benefits both of those strategies.
So I heard that you have to get up early though, right? Because you have decided to also host two events. One of these is sort of a regular time zone for North American players, but one of these events is specifically timed to better accommodate for European players.
Yeah, absolutely.
What made you decide to do that?
Yeah, so that was one of the pieces of feedback that we had. Selfishly, the reason I started Tuesday night Eternal was that was the time that worked best for me, doing it after my kids went to bed and being able to do it late at night. But some of the feedback was a lot of players saying, we want to participate too, but we can't do it at night, especially the European players doing it at 3 or 4 in the morning or whatever it was. So I got a lot of feedback saying, is there another time that we can do this? So that's where we said, okay, well, let's find a time that benefits either European players or players who prefer the morning instead of the evenings. And so every alternating week, we do it on Friday mornings, essentially for North American time, which is 8 a.m. Eastern time, but it's 1 p.m. in Europe. So it's an afternoon tournament for Europeans, so they have a time to play and it's not the middle of the night. So to try to be flexible there, and I can wake up at 8 a.m. My co-host last week, though, was on Pacific time, so waking up at 5 a.m. for them, I'm pretty impressed they were able to do that.
So what's on the line for the top 16? What are these folks playing for ultimately?
Yeah, that's a good question. So each individual event, so the winner of each challenge, in addition to everything we've talked about, also gets $20. It's not a world's prize money, but for a random weeknight event, it's pretty good. And that will increase with donations as well. We've already gotten a nice donation from the Misplay podcast, and any other donations would be great to help increase that. But yeah, that's a good question. What's on the line at the end? Right now, bragging rights and some cash prize, which is yet to be determined.
Okay.
Obviously, we'll have some cash prize there. It'll depend a little bit on both donations as well as support from Direwolf. So, we've talked to Direwolf directly. I'm in communication with them, every day about this, and they definitely want to see it succeed. It's just figuring out, what that looks like, whether that's prize money, whether that's in-game rewards. We're still trying to figure that out, but it'll be a cash prize. It'll be something from Direwolf. It'll be bragging rights. So, it'll be a competitive nature. There'll be some prizes, but we got a couple months to figure that out.
And all for the low cost of free.
Yeah.
All right. I have one more question for you. So I know that you are pretty close friends with Eternal designer Andrew Beckstrom. Is that right?
That is true.
So if you know anything about the competitive 2021 season, just give us a sign. I know you can't say anything, but just give us a sign and to let us know if it's something they're still working toward.
Well, I will say that in the past, when I have heard about things, I have not been the best at not accidentally having a slip of the tongue when I haven't intended to. So you can trust me.
No.
You can trust me when I'll say that I have absolutely no idea, that I don't have any idea. Because if I did, I'd probably accidentally let something slip out. But I don't know. I have not heard a thing.
Andrew Beckstrom. BK must have learned to not share any secrets.
That's probably what it is BK's like, I'm never telling him anything again.
right. But on something that is more specific to your case, do you know anything about third-party tournament support for the client? They actually did a pretty big update recently for, well, I don't know if it's big, but like a reasonable update for quality of life things. Do you know anything if they might be making in-client support for third-party tournaments so you don't have to use Battlefy?
Yeah, I don't know anything specifically on that nature. What I can say on that is that we've talked about that as one of the items of concern. So I gave them a whole list of feedback, and we've been talking about a number of things. One of the things is prize support, which we kind of talked about on the tournament. Another is sort of support and promotion. So having them, help promote community tournaments and make sure that, whether that's in game or whether that's through streams. Luis streamed on Tuesday night and then hosted us. And I know that was helpful to do that. So the promotion is one of them to help community. And then in game was also part of that. So whether that's better spectating, whether that's some of the bugs, I know they've been very quick to respond to us when we've had questions about that, either whether that's bugs or things they can do. I don't know specifically in game. I know that spectating could always be improved. I'm not sure if the bug with there was a bug before with expedition cards when you do direct challenges that the Incarnus, for example, could pull anything from Throne and not just expedition cards, which is not the way it was supposed to work. I don't know if that's been fixed, but that was an issue too. Little things like that, which make it a little tough. I'm sure it's on their priority list, but I'm not sure exactly where. But fingers crossed. Hopefully, we'll get some of that support.
Well, if you're out there listening, support the Tuesday Night Eternal series, whether it be by, donating their eventual prize pool or by participating. I think that there's a strong case for people wanting to play competitive Eternal on a third-party circuit. I think that, the numbers aren't going to lie about that. So It's free, good for different time zones, and it's broadcast. So there's, fame and glory that goes along with it. So definitely check it out.
Yeah, and what I'd say one of the best parts about it is that it bridges this nice gap between casual and fun, but also competitive. You don't have the world championship stake on the line, so you don't have quite as much pressure, but you still have a opportunity to play something that's a little more competitive than ladder. You get to play against Doc, you get to play against the Boxer, with some stakes on the line in the finals. You can test your merit, you can test your deck and sort of get that competitive drive without having the pressure of having a world championship invite on the line. So it's a really nice balance for players who want that competitive drive or new players who want to get into the competitive scene.
Sounds like a lot of really exciting things are happening, and I am looking forward to seeing how they play out, especially as the month goes by and with this new set. Thanks so much for joining us, Telemokos, and good luck with running the rest of the tournament. I know that it's a lot of commitments in a lot of different ways, and we all want to see it succeed.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. Much appreciated, guys.
All right, that will be it for this week's FECast. Don't worry, we are going to get to more spoilers, and we're planning on recording the next episode of the cast Monday, the day that the set comes out. So definitely be on the lookout for that, and we'll have all of our opinions on all the cards as soon as we can get them out. So yeah, if you're looking for more spoiler talk, do not worry. Thanks for listening to another episode of FECast. If you have the time, give us a review. Would be great to hear what people think on, various platforms, whatever it may be. And we'll see you next week when we have the full set out and we're talking about all of that. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Until then, we'll see you in the friend zone. The Friends of Eternal Discord is the best place on the internet to get better at Eternal. We have players of all skill and experience levels all happy to help each other out on basically any aspect of their Eternal gameplay. And making all this possible is our generous patrons over at patreon.com. If you'd like to support FECast or Friends of Eternal, consider donating at patreon.com/Friends of Eternal. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, we'll see you in the friend zone.